everyone, greetings and salutations from PaleoAdventures. Of course, I am Walter, and of course you guys, most of you know me out there. But we're here today in the lab. I'm doing a little prep demonstration for you. I have the jacket with our Leonard T.rex fibula that I've extracted the fibula from the jacket already. This was kind of a neat little spot. We had, it was a partial, kind of chewed up Triceratops scapula, shoulder blade, with bite marks from it, looks like probably from a Tyrannosaurus, that was lying partially over this half a fibula. Now the distal end is missing, but the proximal end is still there. So I'm going to do a quick little demonstration. This is going to be pretty easy. Might not even get to the... And there, of course, is the fibula, now extracted from the jacket. You'll see that we have this kind of a spiral fracture at the end. Not quite a spiral fracture, but it's definitely a pre-depositional break on that end. We have it in the blast box. For those of you who are not familiar with fossil prep, that's what we call a blast box. We're going to be using a variety of different tools to prepare this specimen, including the microabrasion unit. So the Microblaster MB, Comco MB1000. And we also have a variety of other tools, including Dremels, rotary grinders, and of course air scribe. This is a Paleo Tools air scribe, and I'll be working on that for some of the harder matrix that's around it. Alright, I suspect this one is going to be fairly quick and painless. It is a very solid piece of bone. We're going to be using this air abrasion over it. You can see this cleans it up nicely. Now with every air abrasion, you want to make sure you keep that tip in motion. You don't want to fixate on one spot for too long. We're using sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. But it's an industrial grade baking soda called Analox. We used to use composite formula, but now we are using an Analox formula. This baking soda should be, theoretically, softer than the bone, especially with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. You've got a lot of dense cortical bone on the outside, and as long as there's not a loose piece that's kind of hanging there on the surface, we should be pretty good. Shouldn't be doing much, if any, damage. Now, some other areas, I'm going to need to use an air scribe. You can see here, right on this end, we've got a lot of dense matrix still attached, maybe some iron concretion in there. And we're just going to very lightly pop those pebbles and that sand off the surface. Be very careful not to hit that surface. I'm going to use my fingers as a guide to keep me from going too far. And I barely touched that rock, and it pops off out of there. Alright, of course we're going to switch tools often, so let's get that blaster out. Again, it's coming out very quickly. The nice thing about these T-rex bones is they are very, very dense, very solid. Unless we force something, we should be pretty quick and painless on this one. See, we do have fracture there, so I'm going to go ahead and try and put a little bit more. Oops, hard to do this and film at the same time. I want to soak a bunch of glue into that fracture there and there, and let that ride right into that crack. We want to soak that down deep. You can see it getting along those fractures there. You don't want to get halfway through the prep on this and all of a sudden it starts to crumble on you. Now That excess will be blasting off with the abrasion. Also, don't be afraid to use hand tools. Some people forget that 90% of your prep is actually going to be using these hand tools. X-Acto blades, dental picks, and some labs won't even consider using the air scribes because they can get 90%, 100% of it, 90 to 100% of it actually with hand tools. Oh, now this end here, of course, this is where the break is, the pre-depositional break. This was completely missing. You can see it's filled in with sand. I want to be very, very careful along there. If there is a bite mark or any gouge, that's a suspect right there. We want to be very, very careful in this area because obviously we don't want to damage anything that could be potential evidence for what caused that break. So again, let's go a little slower. We'll lower the pressure just a hair, and we'll see what comes out. Now, one thing I can definitely see is that the surface has some pits, some pre-depositional pitting in there. This might be because it was exposed to the elements for some time. It's likely what happened. Many of the bones at the Tooth Straw West quarry seem to have had some stream transport, and even prior to that they were lying exposed for extended periods of time. Many of the bones actually have insect borings where termites or domestic beetles or something was actually gnawing on the bone as a nutrient source. So you could see just some little pits in there. That indicates that this was out in the weather for some time. I haven't seen any clear-cut insect borings yet on this piece, but I know others have. So let's keep going. Okay, we've almost got this one, this end at least, pretty well wrapped up. I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of ease, and skip forward a little bit so you can see the end product. Okay, now it looks like we got the thing pretty well done. Our fibula head is finished. We got all the clay and sand off of it. It's looking really, really good. And now the final touch is that we're going to coat the surface with some polyvinyl acetate. This is polyvinyl acetate, PVA. This is a consolidant glue. It's a sealant. It's going to soak down into all of those little cracks and crevices and help hold this bone together. The PVA comes as little plastic beads, basically, and it will dissolve in acetone. The acetone is the delivery system. And that acetone eventually evaporates, leaving behind the very, very thin, watery glue. You don't want this too thick, because then if it's too thick, it comes out too glossy looking. You don't want that. You just want it to soak down into all those cracks and crevices. Okay. So our fossil preparation has been completed on this particular bone, on our fibula. It came out really, really beautiful. We have a variety of structures on this that's going to help us to identify it. And this is where the fun really begins. Once it's prepared, then we can do a little research on it, analyze it, look at it under a microscope, let's say. We'll take a look at the surface. We'll see if there's any indications that will give us some idea what happened to this animal. We're going to get some measurements and sizes to determine if it's a left or if it's a right. If it is an adult, how it compares to other specimens in the genus. Now, to do some of this research, I've pulled up our trusty description of Tyrannosaurus rex by Chris Brochu. Really wonderful description of the biggest and best Tyrannosaurus rex ever found, Sue. And you can see from our descriptions here and from the illustrations that we are dealing with a right fibula, which is perfect because it was found in association with, pan over here, a right femur. There is the right femur, still in a jacket. We're going to have to try and open that up maybe in a month or so and get that one prepared. But it was found in association with that right femur, and here we have a right fibula. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip this over so we can see the other side, and I'll show you a couple other things. All right, so now we have our specimen flipped over so you can see the other side. And we're going to do some measurements and point out a few things. Actually, I've already measured it. It measures about 45 inches to the break, which puts it in the adult size category. A hair smaller than Sue, more like the size of a stand T.rex, which is about what we figured from the femur. This here is, of course, the head of the fibula, so we're looking at the outside edge. And this is what we call the iliofibularis tubercle. This is an attachment point for the iliofibularis muscle, which goes up into the acetabulum, the hip bone, connects to this and helps in locomotion. You can see it's quite large and robust. There's a bit of rugosity on the other side for the attachment point. So very powerful legs. It's another thing we can point out to this. Let's take a good close look at this break. We were looking at this closely for bite marks. I don't see anything at the moment that indicates a bite mark, but we do see a whole bunch of pitting, which is typical of this particular site. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And you can even see that pitting is on that edge, this predepositional break. Whoop, where am I at? Right there, you can see that pitting. If I zoom in a little closer. So whatever caused that pitting, and I'm going to show you some other examples in a second here, likely occurred after the break. So this was broken at some point. It is an oblique, irregular break. Starts out almost transverse, but then we have this little jagged edge here. So that was a pretty rough break, possibly while it was still green and not fossilized. There are some parallel striations. You can kind of see them right here. These are scratches, parallel scratches. They're not caused by fossil prep. We see this sometimes in areas where there's trampling. It's a taphonomic signature that indicates possibility of trampling. You'll see they cut across the grain. We see them a couple places elsewhere in here. So it's possible the animal died and was later trampled. You can also see this sometimes with stream transport, so it may have traveled a little ways. Probably not too far because it's in association with other Tyrannosaurus rex bones. So these did not travel terribly far. So it's possible that this is more of a trampling situation. Now, you will also see some pitting, some circular pitting, as well as this down and through here. That is very, very typical of this dig site. And it is likely an indicator of insect burrowing and insect borings. Could be acid etching, that was considered at one point. That may still be part of the case, but it is certainly some post-mortem modification to the bone. I've got two examples to show you here, extreme examples. This is a piece of unknown dinosaur bone, not quite sure what this is from, either partial rib or maybe part of an ischium. And you can see that this bone has a lot of that post-mortem burrowing. Dermestid beetles, termites, some insect of some sort may have been gnawing on that as a food source. Indicates that this was sitting out on that floodplain for some time before it got buried. Okay, here's another example of that, and this is one of Leonard's toes. This was found this year, not too far from the fibula, again, so another bone-in association. And you can just see the surface has a lot of these weird pitting structures. There's a nice circular one right there. So it's possible it was lying out there. Maybe there was some tissue, some meat still attached to this thing. Insects were laying their eggs in that. and when they hatched, the larvae were nibbling away and having a feast. Even the big things get chewed up by the little stuff. Anyway, so that is our prep and our diagnosis of this beautiful fibula. Hopefully we will find the rest of the skeleton shortly, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all, and take care.